Erin James is an assistant professor of English at the University of Idaho, where she also directs the MA in English. She published The Story World Accord, Eco-Narratology and Post-Colonial Narratives with the University of Nebraska Press in 2015. Her previous publications include essays in the Journal of Commonwealth and Post-Colonial Literature, The Bioregional Imagination, University of Georgia Press, 2012, and Teaching Eco-Criticism and Green Cultural Studies, Palgrave, 2012. Her work explores intersections of eco-criticism and narrative theory and questions the role narratives stand to play in response to today's environmental crisis. Tonight, Erin will be reading from What Is It Like to Be a Chimpanzee? Welcome, Erin.
I'm so glad that Laura and Jen, who's about to read, are also reading with me. I have great anxiety about not being a creative writer, being at this event. People write great things and then I dissect it. So it's a little, I feel, this is exciting, especially exciting that I have like disco lighting to do this. So as Jennifer stated up front, if I could sum up my current work in one question, it is, what is it like to be a chimpanzee? And I know I just tried to tell you that I'm a serious scholar, so I'm gonna try to make this sound serious. So my current project takes as a starting point the endorsement on the back of Colin McAdams' novel A Beautiful Truth. And this is a novel that came out a couple years ago by a young Canadian writer about a couple who can't conceive a child, and so they adopt a chimpanzee. And things go horrifically wrong, as tends to happen in these situations. Nevertheless, on the back of the book, you see an endorsement by Joe Sullivan, who is the executive director of Save the Chimps, which is a real-life organization that rescues chimpanzees that have been used for medical testing and basically gives them end-of-life care. So Joe Sullivan celebrates the novel for helping readers understand that chimpanzees, quote, should be loved, respected, and protected in their natural habitat. And she also declares that, quote, we hope everyone reads this book and comes to see chimpanzees as we do. And I read that and thought, that's odd, because a chimpanzee eats someone's face in this novel. So what is she talking about here, right? What is she getting at? She also celebrates the fact that a portion of the sale of the book benefits Save the Chimps. So this intrigued me when I was thinking about this book. And I see an implication in her statement and her endorsement that reading narratives, such as A Beautiful Truth, can lead to empathy for non-human characters, which in turn can lead to changes in real-life attitudes and behaviors of readers, right? There's this clear line. Read the book, have some feelings, change how you think about things and what you do. And that assumption prompts me to ask, is that fair? Is there a direct path between reading, empathy, and action? Can novels really help us understand what it is like to be an individual from a different species? And if so, how do they do this? Here's the dissection that's coming in, right? So one potential answer to this question lies in recent developments in cognitive science. Cognitive scientists have gotten hip to what's happening in English, and they're increasingly working with scholars of narrative to study what happens to your brain when you read. So these studies literally involve putting poor undergraduate students in fMRI machines and having them read Austen or Chekhov, or even those skippy stories that you read as a little kid, and looking at what parts of their brain fire at what part in the story they're reading. It's like those old anti-drug commercials, you know, the egg in the frying pan, this is your brain on drugs, so like this is your brain on narrative, right? What's happening in there? And these studies are producing some really interesting results that give scientific backing to something that I think we all know pretty intuitively, which is that it's really possible to lose yourself in a text, right? So scholars have found that when readers read about a character performing an action, so say kicking a ball, the same part of their brain will fire as if they had kicked the ball themselves. And so the scholars are extrapolating out from this to suggest that to understand a narrative, we must mentally model the world of the story and imagine ourselves in it, going through the same actions that the characters do that we're reading about. In other words, we must lose ourselves in the story and experience what it is like to be the characters. We must mentally and emotionally transport ourselves to the characters' world and feel what it is like to be them, to comprehend the text. So scholars of narrative have begun to take the next step in this project, which is to ask, what types of narrative structures best facilitate this process of imaginative modeling and transportation? And these questions involve picking apart the basic building blocks of stories, right? So asking, are there certain time structures that are more conducive to this process of immersion? So think straight linear chronologies, lots of flashbacks or flash forwards, right? Can this affect this process of immersion? What about certain types of narrators? First-person narrators versus third-person omniscient narrators? Is any one category particularly better at smoothing this path to immersion? What about even different types of representations of space? Top-down, kind of Google Map representations of space versus on-the-ground, dynamic representations of space. So my background lies in the environment. And so I have a slightly different take on this project. And my key question is, how can reading narratives help us better understand what it is like to be a member of a species other than our own? How can they help us imagine the experiences of non-human characters? And really, can they do this, right? So I'm really just querying whether Sullivan is onto something or whether she's totally up to lunch, right? How can novels and short stories immerse us in the experiences and emotional states of other beings, such as chimpanzees, and I get even wackier, I look at dogs, I even look at plants, right? Can a story help you understand what it is like to be a plant? I read some crazy stuff for this, right? It's great. If they can, if these stories can, how might environmentalists harness this process to encourage readers to make changes in the real-life attitudes and behaviors that underlie their relationship with the environment? So essentially, what is the environmental promise here, right? Can we think of narratives as playing an essential role in environmental activism by triggering these empathic relationships to other species? So in my chimpanzee project, I consider these questions by surveying 3 additions to the recent bloom in chimp lit, and that's not my phrase, that's like a legit thing, right? So I've got some show and tell here. So one is McAdam's novel. A second one is Karen Joy Fowler's We Are All Completely Beside Ourselves, which I know some of you have read because I've talked to you about it. A third one is Benjamin Hale's The Evolution of Brutal and War, doorstop of a book. There's even one of my favorite ones is a history of 1940s Hollywood as told by Cheetah, the chimp from Tarzan, right? It's his autobiography. Spoiler, he's drunk the whole time, right? Okay, so my survey explores how each text prompts readers to engage with chimp experiences and emotional states by examining their styles of narration. So first-person narration, and I'm using bunny ears here, in this text, in which a linguistically sophisticated chimp narrates his own autobiography, and like he has lots of words, right? This one chimp. First-person narration in Fowler's narrative, in which a human narrator summarizes the life of her chimp sister, right, insisting that this non-human being is her sister. And third-person narration with variable focalization in this text, in which an omniscient perspective flits pretty evenly between the perspectives, a point of view of humans and point of view of chimps. And it's fascinating, in the sections that are from the point of view of chimps, McAdam is really taking seriously what it would be like to perceive the world with limited language. And so in these sections you have degraded syntax, very strange grammar. There's lots of Hungarian words peppered through these sections, not because chimps are particularly adept at speaking Hungarian, but because McAdam was attracted to the sound, the harshness of the words, which he felt like would be particularly good with the chimp mouth structure, right? That's, what they might say, right? Wild stuff. Okay, so in each case, I explore how the text narration facilitates or inhibits knowledge and understanding between readers and chimp characters. So in other words, I'm asking if Jo Sullivan is right to pin her hopes for increased endorsements to her nonprofit upon a novel about chimp captivity. That's it. Thanks so much.